All right, y'all. So we're going to start off today looking just briefly at John Baudrillard here. He's a postmodern philosopher, and the idea of a simulation, kind of like the Matrix, and hyperreality, those ideas are a couple of his more notable concepts that he kind of developed. Specifically, I want to take a look at hyperreality, and I want to keep this in mind as we move forward with today's kind of stories. Hyperreality is an inability of consciousness to distinguish reality from a simulation of reality, especially in technologically advanced postmodern societies. So that technologically advanced postmodern society part, I think is definitely, it's pretty easy to see where that's relevant. And we're going to take a quick look at the fracas surrounding the Parents' Rights and Education Bill in Florida. And we're going to look at how the idea of hyperreality maps onto that.
Critics say it does that the Don't Say Gay bill, and there's good reason for that. It bans certain discussions of sexual orientation and gender identity from classrooms across the state. This week, Florida's Republican Governor, Ron DeSantis, signaled his support for it.
We've seen instances of students being told by different folks in school, don't worry, don't pick your gender yet, do all this other stuff. They won't tell the parents about these discussions that are happening. That is entirely inappropriate. Schools need to be teaching kids to read, to write. They need to teach them science, history.
Congressman Charlie Crist, a Democrat who's running to become Florida's next governor, a job he's held before, joins me now. Congressman, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it. This bill cleared the Florida Senate Education Committee this past week and still has hurdles ahead. But I wanted to get your thoughts on what you just heard from Governor DeSantis. He was saying that, schools should be busy teaching, kids how to read and write and so on. And of course, yes, part of that is true. But we also have such a terrible problem in this country where
part of the idea that schools should be teaching kids how to read and write is true. So fucking thank you, Jim Acosta, for that huge concession that partially you're right if you talk about kids needing to learn things in school.
Kids who are gay are bullied. And, school.
Notice he's talking about gay kids here, and he doesn't mention trans kids. This is all a big hide the ball effort, and not mentioning that trans kids are the most relevant demographic to this bill is suspect.
Have to be able to deal with that sort of thing.
You're absolutely right, Jim. I think it's pretty unconscionable that our governor would be advocating censorship about something that is happening all over the world. There are gay people. In fact, last night I was at an LGBTQ.
So they're really winding back the clock.
Gala, and I just think I was at an LGBTQ.
They're really winding back the clock, and they're trying to make it so that the focus is on gay. They're trying to make it seem like Republicans, quote unquote, are positioning themselves against the concept of gayness when trans issues and gender ideology, more specifically, gender ideology, critical gender ideology, is the relevant issue. So these guys are really playing hide the ball. It is funny here. This guy says he's at an LGBTQ caucus gala. And so I wonder if there's some subliminal messaging going on there.
Caucus gala. And, I just think it's important for us to understand that we're all children of God and be accepting and be embracing and not be
So he's trying to out-Christian the person who doesn't want children to be giving hormone-regulating drugs.
Discriminating. And so I really don't understand where the governor's coming off with this. I don't understand where the legislature is on this.
All right, so we're not going to watch this whole video because these two were fucking bullshit liars. But let's just keep in mind what he said. He doesn't understand where the legislature is coming from on this bill. This is a guy who is a representative, was the governor in the past, and again is running for governor. And he's claiming to not understand where the legislature is coming from. We're going to skip ahead a little bit, and we're going to get directly to where the legislature is coming from on this one, okay? Now, I found a source that's not Fox for this, so but this is where the legislature is coming from. This is back in January, and this case right here is the impetus for the legislation. A Florida father sues a school after daughter's suicide attempts, plural, says gender counseling hidden from parents. Okay, so we're going to go to the Daily Mail article on this. But basically what happened is this 12-year-old girl, her teachers, she must have expressed some thought about gender to her teachers, and they didn't tell her parents, and they started influencing this young girl to transition, and they hid that from her parents, and she tried to hang herself twice at school. And the fucking school held that information back from the parents. So, Mr. Christ, Mr. Charlie Christ, who's trying to fucking invoke Christ in your argument about how you don't understand what the legislature's doing, this is where it's fucking coming from, Charlie, is a 12-year-old girl trying to fucking kill herself twice at school, and people thinking we can't tell her parents that. Look at this. They basically created a double life for my daughter. Right? So this guy's talking about fucking how there's gay people all around the world in an effort to hide the ball on the fact that teachers and Democratic politicians, yes, Democratic politicians, have been supporting this fucking bullshit, including hiding a suicide attempt from parents. It's fucking crazy. So that's the level of lying that these people are at. Let's take a look at the next video. Got this fucking guy, Pete Buttigieg, whose father's life work was translating a very influential communist author. So let's keep that in mind.
Because in particular, that it could lead to more suicides among
See, so this is the HyperReality. This is why we opened up today's video looking at that. The HyperReality from the last video, which I already closed, was that this bill is targeting gay people. Okay? The next piece of HyperReality that we're going to have pushed on us by this fucking ideological asshole is that this bill could increase suicides. But again, let's look back at the impetus for the bill. A 12-year-old girl who tried to hang herself twice at her school after months of secret meetings about her gender identity. The staff allegedly went behind their backs and created a double life for their daughter. So this is the level of sheer fucking criminal lunacy that we're at this point. And this fucking guy is going to try to frame the situation as though the bill could increase suicides, when in reality, teachers at schools, regardless of the number of suicide attempts, are just sweeping them under the rug anyways. So let's see what fucking Mayor Pete, the Secretary of Transportation, has to say about this.
Legislation. He says in particular that it could lead to more suicides among LGBTQ youth. President Biden has slammed the bill as well. In your view, is this dangerous legislation?
Well, as a gay man, I think that this is extremely dangerous legislation. And one time when I was young, someone said something about a trans person. RuPaul was on, and someone changed the channel, and I tried to kill myself.
Fucking Mayor Pete.
One time, as a youngster, my dad was translating some communist literature in the living room, and I was cross-dressing, and he told me not to be trans.
Shut the fuck up, Mayor Pete.
Absolutely.
Actually, talk now.
Yeah, and the reason is that it tells youth who are different or whose families are different that there's something wrong with them out of the gate. And I do think that contributes to the shocking levels of suicidal thoughts and suicide attempts among LGBTQ youth. You know, Chasten, my husband, pointed out that, you know, if our kids someday, some Monday morning, come into class and kids sitting around, the teacher's got the morning circle talking about how everybody's weekends went, and one of them says, "I had the best weekend." Is the teacher supposed to say, "No, we don't talk about about that. At any age where it's appropriate to talk about, a kid's mom and dad, then it should be appropriate to talk about a kid's mom and mom, dad and dad, whatever family structures we live with.
All right, so again, fucking bullshit here. He's trying to make it seem as though the bill is preventing kids from talking about their home lives. That's not the case, okay? It's about ideology. And the idea that so the argument that he made a moment ago is that they're telling kids that there's something wrong with them out the gate. This is what James Lindsay sometimes refers to as the iron law of woke projection. This is exactly the opposite of what's taking place. Precisely the opposite. What's happening is instead of kids being allowed to discover their sexuality on their own once they hit puberty or even after that, what's going on is gender ideologues in the form of fucking kindergarten teachers sometimes are taking children who express the slightest deviation from being a stereotypical boy or girl, and they're telling them that there is something wrong with them because of that, right? They're telling them that what's wrong with them is that their biology and their gender identity are misaligned. They're telling them that they are trans. And so, when I say right and wrong there, it's not a value judgment about somebody being trans. I really don't give a fuck how anybody lives their life. But the point is that if you teach a child who's extremely impressionable and doesn't have much knowledge about biology or psychology, if you teach them that their gender and their biology are mismatched, then you are the one teaching them that there's something wrong with them from the jump. And so you have to look out for the projection in this propaganda. The things that they say, it could increase suicide attempts. It's telling them there's something wrong with them. It's preventing the kids from talking about their home life. That's the opposite in all three cases, okay? You can say gay. Kids can talk about their home lives. A teacher isn't supposed to follow up on that and start to probe the nature of their relationship between the parents. That would be inappropriate. And keep in mind, the bill only goes up until 3rd grade, I believe. So it's not as if we're trying to shield every child from this. The idea is that young children are extremely impressionable. Extremely. And if they have someone trusted, like their teacher, fucking tell them that they should think about transitioning gender, and then they hold weeks of secret meetings, and then, even when the kid tries to hang herself twice, they don't tell the fucking parents. That's a fucking issue. I'm sorry if that's a controversial stance.
That's part of what it means to be pro-family, is to be pro-everything.
I want to get...
I mean, that's pretty wild. So they let him do this little quick hitter because he happens to be gay, obviously. And then they move right on to some shit that actually sort of has to do with his job. Taking a look at... Keep in mind this idea of hyperreality while we watch this. We're going to take a look at a little video from Ron Perlman, the actor, who had quite the reaction to Ron DeSantis' support for the Florida Parental Rights and Education Bill.
Don't say. Good morning, Governor DeSantis. Ron here. Don't say gay. Don't say as the first two words in a sentence spoken by a political leader of a state in the United States of America. Don't say. Don't fucking say, you fucking Nazi pig. Say. First Amendment. Read about it. Then run for office. You piece of shit. Good morning, Governor DeSantis. Ron here.
All right, so you can see Ron is so subject to the hyperreality that he seems to be under the impression that Ron DeSantis has been running around saying, vote for the Don't Say Gay bill, vote for the Don't Say Gay bill, when I don't think the words Don't Say Gay have left Ron DeSantis' mouth this whole time, unless he was specifically calling out the media's deliberate, dishonest framing of the story. Some other folks that are subject to the hyperreality, going to include the folks at Disney. So this is a pretty interesting little article here. Disney employees stage a walkout to demand action against the Don't Say Gay bill. And they put Don't Say Gay quote marks here. I wonder why. Maybe they know that's not what it's called. I think that's the case, because in the first line of their article, they refer to it correctly as the Florida Parental Rights and Education Bill. And they note that it's been dubbed the Don't Say Gay bill by opponents. So now we refer to things by the way their opponents would have them phrased. So I think the Disney employees were walking out over what they viewed as an apathetic reaction from the company. A threat to human rights is a threat to all. Yeah, I mean, this shit is kind of ridiculous. But anyway, so the Florida Disney employees are walking out. And what else is going on in Disney? Let's see here. Oh, whoops. Looks like Disney employees got not 108, but they were among the 108 arrested in a human trafficking sting. So they're not interested in grooming children at all. Let's see here. Detectives in Polk County, Florida, say dozens were arrested during an operation focused on human trafficking, prostitution, and child predators. 4 suspects are Disney employees. Xavier Jackson, 27, worked as a lifeguard at the Polynesian Resort for Walt Disney. Apparently, he sent inappropriate photos of himself to an undercover detective who pretended to be a 14-year-old girl. He was charged with 3 counts of transmitting harmful material to a minor and 1 count of unlawful communication. 3 others were attempting to solicit a prostitute. Honestly, that's not, perhaps immoral, but or unethical, but it's not the same as trying to groom children. And so it is important to look again at some of the kind of the rhetoric and the philosophical, ideological basis for some of this shit. So, grooming is what it's called when these adults try to impress and indoctrinate these children into a particular ideology. And so here is an example from the homie James Lindsay. Groomers in the New York Times comments. So again, we're looking at these stories. The whole point of the Don't Say Gay bill, which I see, even I'm referring to it because it just rolls off the tongue so well. The whole point of the Florida Parents' Rights and Education bill is to prevent children from being indoctrinated by teachers. Okay? And there's an ideology behind it. Take a look at some of these comments, and you're going to see how fucking crazy these people are. So, sexualizing children? And here's where shit gets crazy, okay? Let's be clear. This is the mind of someone who's fully indulged this ideology. Let's be clear. And again, this is a comment that I'm reading for anybody who's listening audio only. This is not me saying this. This is a comment from a New York Times reader. And this is her response to the accusation that Disney is sexualizing children. Let's be clear. Children are sexual beings. From the start, children are sexual. It's not anything Disney has to tell them unless some adult has lied or misguided them. What children deserve is help understanding their sexual thoughts and feelings. That is what shows like The Proud Family do. They help them understand what is already there. It seems odd that some people teach their children about spirituality, which is not tangible. Is their spirit there from the start? Perhaps, but it doesn't express itself until others teach children how to express spirituality. Children don't naturally pray. Maybe we should be more horrified that something as unnatural as religion is taught to children. So for one, religion is not taught to children in schools, at least not public schools. And for the same reason of indoctrination that those conversations are banned, that's why these conversations are being outlawed. related to the sexuality of children. Children are not sexual beings. Prepubescent children typically recoil when they are confronted with some sort of sexual activity, whether that be kissing on a screen of a movie or some other shit like that. And see, the idea is what children deserve is help understanding their sexual thoughts and feelings. So what this person is advocating for is for an adult to help a child interpret a thought that they had. Honestly, whether or not it's sexual or not, I just don't think that that's what teachers should be doing. I don't think teachers should teach children how to interpret their own thoughts. I think teachers should teach children how to properly assess information and the world around them in an objective manner without ideology. Now, of course, a lot of companies are fighting against parental rights bills like this. Apple is a notable one. Here's a crazy one. All right, so this is the Salem-Keizer School District. This is the... All right, so this is the Salem-Keizer Public School District. Oregon and Keizer, Oregon. They've got a joint school district administration, apparently. Let's take a look at some of the literature that's coming out of here. All right. So they just issued a new procedure for trans students, which states that school staff will not disclose any information that may reveal a student's transgender status to others, including caregivers. So remember, the issue here is that this girl said something about gender identity, and these grooming teachers indoctrinated her into believing that she was trans, and she started getting picked on in the midst of her transition, and then she tried to kill herself twice, and they didn't tell her parents. All right? And the law that they're pushing in, or not the law, but the rule that they're pushing at this school district in Salem-Keizer, Oregon, in Salem and Keizer, Oregon, is that schools can't disclose any information that would reveal a student's transgender status to others, including caregivers, so including parents. So let's take a look at this image if we can. Here we go. So this procedure outlines the steps that district staff should take in order to protect the privacy of a student when they wish to affirm their identity at school as two-spirit, transgender, non-binary, or another gender non-conforming identity. Let's just see how they're identifying these things. So according to the Salem-Keizer School District, gender identity is an individual's internal sense of their own gender, which can include being a woman, man, another gender, multiple genders, or no gender. So you can be multiple genders now, according to the Salem-Keizer School District. The gender marker is a letter representing an individual's gender in school district documents. So basically they're using FM and now X. Fucking ridiculous. All right, so here's the procedure. District staff will keep students' transgender status confidential to the extent allowed under Family Education Rights Privacy Act in their communications. School staff will not disclose any information that may reveal a student's transgender status to others, including caregivers, other staff, and students, unless the student has authorized such disclosure or the staff member is legally required to do so. Students will be able to change their name and or gender marker in Synergy, which I assume is just their software program they keep track of students in, with past records relating to gender kept confidential. All students may designate a name or gender marker change in Synergy. No documentation of a legal name change is required. So basically they're allowing kids to assume an identity on school grounds, and they're never going to tell the parents. And so what do you think is going to happen when one of those kids tries to hang him or herself twice?
And those kids from the Northwest are going to be way better with knots as well. So,
All right, so we're going to continue with this video. This is a teacher. He's going to tell us why kids need to learn about being transgender and non-binary as young as. So clearly, this is a fucking real great guy.
The extent to which they're ready, when they've been exposed to information, they're ready to learn about it, whether you think they are or not. And the research says that there is no age too young to talk about pretty much anything. If they know about it, they're ready to learn.
There's no age that's too young to talk about pretty much anything, is the mentality that this teacher is operating under. So that's fantastic.
Right? So there is no...
How about anal rape? Should we teach them about how young should children learn about anal rape?
What we think is always age appropriate. It is if they don't know about it. They haven't been exposed to it, then yeah, you can give them time. But once they're exposed to it, and social media is going to do it, right? I know some kindergartners in the school with cell phones. Mine had a cell phone. And so they get access to information. They can learn.
Because of cell phones, we need to teach your kid about transgenderism as young as kindergarten.
Quickly, the world is teaching them faster than probably you are. And so conversation with parents around how do we want to approach talking about LGBTQ plus, because there are students as early as kindergarten who are identifying as non-gender conforming, non-binary, that are transgender. And so because they're in our school, they're in classrooms, then that becomes the responsibility on the adults to say, okay, I have a student who identifies this way, and so it's my responsibility to make sure the classroom is inviting to them, just like it is to someone who might be Asian, Laotian, Korean, African, whatever the identity is.
So this dude considers a kindergartner being transgender as the same thing as the kindergartner just being like from a different country or something. And so to sum it up, let's just kind of run back through this stuff real quick. We've got John Baudrillard, postmodern philosopher, came up with HyperReality, this concept of an inability to distinguish reality from a simulation, especially in a technologically advanced postmodern society. My kind of articulation of this is that the narrative is a term that you can think of interchangeably with hyperreality, the narrative of the media. Let's look at that. Let's run back through it. We've got CNN running clips with elected officials saying things like this.
A lot of the younger folks who realize their gay status get bullied at school, and some end up committing suicide. So I think...
Okay, so he's concerned about suicide, right? He's against this bill, and he's concerned about suicide. Pete Buttigieg.
President Biden has slammed the bill as well. In your view, is this dangerous legislation?
Absolutely, yeah, and the reason is that it tells youth who are different or whose families are different that there's something wrong with them out of the gate, and I do think that contributes to the shocking levels of suicidal thoughts and suicide attempts among LGBTQ youth. Chasten, my husband, pointed.
He's concerned about suicide as well. So they are both concerned that the Florida Parental Rights and Education bill is going to increase the amount of suicide. The bill's purpose is to provide transparency, at the least, between school officials and teachers and parents when a student expresses some sort of distress surrounding, gender identity. And of course, the idea of the bill is obviously to prevent that conversation from taking place in schools in the first place, to prevent the grooming of that child and the inspiration of that ideology within them, and ultimately that associated emotional distress. You've got people like Ron Perlman going absolutely crazy in scenarios where Ron DeSantis has been out saying, don't say gay, don't say gay. That's not the case. It's not what the bill's called. Ron DeSantis never said that, but the HyperReality has created that impression within the mind of a zealous activist like Ron Perlman. We've got Disney employees staging a walkout to demand action. They claim that the bill is going to harm children, much like Pete Buttigieg and Representative Christ. But in reality, not hyper-reality, Disney employees are among 108 people arrested for human trafficking, 3 of whom were trying to solicit a prostitute who wasn't explicitly referred to as underage, so that can be somewhat separated from the grooming situation. We had individuals in the New York Times comments, right? These are people on the ground. Yes, they're anonymous. They don't have a platform or a following, but it's important to keep your fingers on the pulse of what people are thinking, and this is the effect of the hyper-reality on the psyche and consciousness of a person. Her response to the question of, is Disney sexualizing children, which itself may be a little bit of a straw man from some weird other comment. I didn't even really look at that, but she wants to make it clear that children are sexual beings. Gross. Again, not something I'm saying. Reading a comment for anyone who's listening, audio only. And she wants children to have help understanding their sexual thoughts and feelings. Okay? We've got this guy from Kansas discussing the need to talk about being transgender, right? He's not talking about the concept. He wants kids to learn about being transgender and being non-binary as young as kindergarten. So he's discussing the rationale that teachers and school administrators are employing in practice on the ground with your children. Document, right? So this rule, this guideline, this protocol, this procedure from this school district in Oregon, the Salem-Keizer School District. This is essentially the opposite of the Florida Parental Rights and Education Bill. It functions as the opposite. The purpose of the Florida Parental Rights and Education Bill is to ensure that any children who are expressing some sort of angst surrounding gender or sexuality have that fully communicated to the home. The point of that is so there's not any sort of dissonance or conflict between their home life and their school life. They don't have to hide their home life from their school. They don't have to hide their school life from their home. And they can live a harmonious and balanced life and hopefully blossom into their full potential as a person. That's the point of the Florida bill. This is the opposite. What this codifies is essentially the protocol that the teachers in Florida were employing, right? This is about keeping a firewall between students' home lives and students' school lives. It's about allowing them to live a double life. And so keep that in mind, double life, right? We've got this guy and Pete Buttigieg concerned that this bill is going to increase suicide. However, when people employ things that are the opposite of the bill, the result is that young people try to hang themselves multiple times, okay? And they create a double life for the daughter, according to her parents. So keep that in mind. I hope that, the goal of connecting some of the current news stories directly to the philosophical roots is helpful. I hope that people have a takeaway of being able to make that connection in a way that, hopefully answers what before would have just seemed like an unknown